Okay, so welcome everyone to the Atlanta FileMaker Developers Group, and anyone who's here from outside of Atlanta. Everyone is welcome. You don't have to be in Atlanta, particularly now that we're all remote. So if you're watching this recording later, we meet on the first Wednesday of each month, and today is Wednesday, December 2nd. We meet the first Wednesday of each month at 7 p.m. Eastern. All right, so today we're going to be demonstrating installing FileMaker Server on Linux with the release of FileMaker Server 19.1.2. Claris is now officially supporting FileMaker Server on Linux, so that's pretty cool. It's a good way to deploy FileMaker Server while using fewer resources on your machine, and also if you're using something like AWS, Linux servers are less expensive than Windows servers because you don't have to pay for the licensing. So that's really nice. So I'm going to today demonstrate setting up a new Linux server on AWS and then deploying FileMaker Server to it. So I'm going to bring this browser window over here so we can take a look at a couple things. So the first thing is the official Claris FileMaker Server 19 deployment guide for Linux. I'm going to put this link in chat in the meeting, so you guys will have that on here if you want to take a look at that too. The steps are pretty simple. It looks like the documentation isn't quite totally updated for Linux because some of this stuff still seems to be talking about like Windows and Mac things, but for the most part it's pretty good, and it definitely has the steps that you need to get this done. So I definitely recommend checking this documentation out. You can follow the steps through here. It makes it all pretty easy. So we're going to be deploying a new instance on AWS. So I'm going to get started here by creating the new instance. I'm going to say launch instances to start a new instance. Now there are a number of different options here for the OS that we want to pick. Claris recommends CentOS 7. Which is, as you can see in here, not actually one of the operating systems that you can pick from here. But luckily for us, if I search for that and go to the AWS Marketplace, CentOS 7 is available here as an AMI. That's an Amazon machine image, so it's kind of like a snapshot of an installed OS. So this is actually provided by CentOS.org. Make sure you find the right one here, but this is the one that we're going to be using for this deployment. You may be able to get it to work on Red Hat or on Amazon's AMIs as well, the Amazon Linux. I haven't tried it on those, but this is what Claris recommends, so that's what we're going to be using for the demo today. So I'm going to select CentOS 7 here. And this screen pops up. This shows you the pricing. So when you're getting one of these Amazon Marketplace AMIs, there can be an additional cost for running some of these services. Claris did this for FileMaker Cloud version 1, which I don't think is actually available anymore. And normally you'd pay for the instance price plus the software, and that's what these two columns are in here. But this is all free, as we can see, 000 all the way down in the software column, so we don't have to pay anything extra for the software beyond just the instances. So that's fine. I'm going to click continue on here. Now we can pick the size instance we want. If you want to do a basic one, you can use the T2 micro. T3 micro is a little more performant. You get 2 CPUs with that, which is nice, and it's actually slightly cheaper. But this is too small to run all of the services that a FileMaker server actually needs. You can run it on a micro, and in testing I actually did that here and deployed FileMaker Server on Linux on a T3 micro, and it works. If you're hosting just a couple of files, this would probably be okay. But if you want to get your web services working, the web publishing engine and things like that, you're going to need a beefier instance just because there's not enough RAM on these. So I'd recommend at least the T3 medium or T2 medium if you want to get the web publishing engine turned on. So I'm going to select that here. So I'm going to say next, configure instance details. We don't need to make any changes to any of this stuff for our demo purposes today. These are some more advanced configuration options. Add storage starts with 8 gigs. I'm going to just bump this up to 20 so we have lots of storage space. But you could add additional drives on here if you wanted to as well. I'm going to select the delete on termination box. If you were deploying a live instance of FileMaker Server, might not want the delete on termination checked, because if you wanted to stop your instance and move these drives around, or if you need to do some recovery, having the hard drive persist after you stop the actual virtual machine can be really good. But in this case, when the demo is done, we're not going to need the hard drive anymore. So I'm going to select the delete on termination checkbox here. You can do encryption at rest on here if you want as well. FileMaker Server also does that. It's kind of built in. So for FileMaker files, if you want encryption at rest, you can turn it on through there. All right, next, add tags. Don't really need any tags on here. Configure security groups. This is a very important part of the setup on here. So when we set up a Linux machine, we're only going to be able to access this through SSH. I'll make this a little bigger just so you guys can all see this, if that makes that a little easier for you. Is that better to see? The default is SSH from 00000 all here. This means that anyone can SSH to this machine. Now this is not particularly secure. When you're setting this up, you'll probably want to set this to my IP so that only you can SSH into the machine to actually do configuration and setup. If you're on a dynamic IP address, that may change. So if all of a sudden you can't connect to it, one day and your modem at home's restarted or something like that, you may need to update your firewall rules on here. We'll also need rules for things like the web publishing engine, port 80 and 443, port 16,000 for the FileMaker Server admin console, and 5003 for FileMaker Pro clients. There's additional ports if you want to use ODBC. Conveniently, before this presentation, I actually set up some existing security groups used for deploying FileMaker Server. So I set up a separate security group that I can just select this now, FM Server here, and we can see the ports that this is going to allow. So here's HTTP on 80, 16,000, 5003, 2399. These are for ODBC. 3389 is for RDP, which we don't actually need for this, because you use RDP for a Windows server, but I've used this security group for setting up Windows servers. It's not going to do anything in this case. HTTPS on 443, and this is allowing pings down here. Just if I want to ping the server and see if I'm hitting it at the right IP address, that's convenient. So I'm going to use that security group, and then we've got another security group that I set up already, which is the Blue Feather Office SSH. And so this is the same thing as what we saw just a second ago. I'm setting this to my IP address where I am right now. So I'm going to check both of these. Oops, not that one. FM Server and this other one that I set up ahead of time. So now we've got all the ports that FileMaker Server needs and SSH. So let's hit review and launch. Not eligible for free tier, that's fine. Oh, did we change the security groups on here? It's here. Yep, this is good. Okay, so saying it's reachable from the outside, like on port 80. That's good. That's what we want, so that anyone can reach these servers. This all looks good. I'm going to hit launch. So before this actually launches, if you need to have a way to get into the server, and they don't use a username and password for SSH generally. You can, but it's more secure to use a public-private key pair. And Amazon will have you generate a new key pair the first time, or if you have an existing key pair, you can use it. But essentially, this puts the public key from this key pair on the server, and then you get to download the private key, and you keep that on your machine, and that is your authentication onto the server. So I'm going to generate a new one in this case here. I'm going to call this FM. Let's do this here. FM Linux demo. And then I'm going to hit download key pair. So this has downloaded this file down. I don't want anyone to see this. Top secret stuff here. No, it's fine. I'll show this to everyone here because this is not going to exist for too long. let's pull this file up. Oops, disappeared. Hold on. Let's go to my downloads. All this is a text file. That's what that looks like. Generally, you'd want to keep this secret and not let anyone see it, but it's fine in this case because this is only going to live for a short amount of time. So I need to keep track of this file. If I lose this PEM file, I'm not going to have access to this machine anymore because this is what is going to be used for authentication. So I'm going to say launch instances here. I'm keeping track of my PEM file. I'm going to put this on my desktop so we have access to this sitting right there. All right, instances are now launching. View launch log. Let's see here, view instances. So here's the instance that we just launched. I'm going to give this a name, FM Linux demo, so we know that this is the thing. Here it is. Let's take a look. All right. So it says this is running, it may be booting up, but we're going to check on that in a second. This is the public IP address of this machine. Now there's not anything there right now, but this is what we're going to need to access this. So I'm going to click this and hit copy here. If I put this in the browser right now, there's not anything there. So we can't see anything, not a surprise. But I am going to use this to connect. Now I'm going to show you a cool technique on how we can do this connection. I'm going to make this bigger. Hopefully that's large enough for everyone to see that. Now the way we connect to this machine is by using the SSH command. So I'm going to type SSH here, and then the username and IP address that we want to use to connect. So the default for this AMI that we selected, this CentOS AMI, is CentOS, that's the username, at the IP address. And then we want to specify that we're going to use private key authentication. So we need to specify that FM Linux demo file that I've saved on the desktop here. And we do that using the I command. Or I guess public key authentication is what we're using technically. So I'm going to do this and go to my desktop, and then this is fmlinuxdemo.pem. So this will work. This command right here will get us into the machine. So I'm going to press return. I can't identify this machine. It's the first time connecting to this. Do we want to continue? Yes. That's okay. All right. I need to change the permissions on this. Hold on a second. Let's see here, chmod 644 FM Linux demo. So I'm changing the permissions on here. So we see the permissions on this file now. This one here, rewrite, read. Oh, sorry, no, it is 644. We need to change this to be chmod 600, so that owner is the only one who can read it. FM Linux demo. All right, let's try this connection again. And now if we look at it here, these are the other people who can access it. There's no access for anyone else. Let's do that SSH command again. There's our SSH command. And now we're connected onto the server. If I type pwd, that sees checks the directory that I'm in, which is home CentOS. That's the name of the user that we've connected with. So we're on that machine now. And anything I do in here is actually happening on this virtual machine on AWS. All right. We're going to be, in our demo world here, we're going to be connecting to this machine pretty regularly and typing out this whole SSH command and the IP address and typing out the path to that PEM file, which is not going to be staying on my desktop. This is going to go into some secure location on my computer. Can be kind of a pain. So let's get an easier way to make this connection here. So on your computer, if you go to your home folder and then SSH, there's a special SSH config file in here, which lets you set up servers that you want to connect to, and lets you set kind of defaults for using the SSH command. And it lets you set up some shortcuts so that you don't have to type this whole thing out every time that you want to do this. So I'm going to make a copy of this file just because I'm going to go back to that in a second. And actually I'm going to make a new config file here. And let's do this here. All right, so this is going to be my new config file. And what we can do on here is make a shortcut for this. So I'm going to say host Linux demo. This is going to be the name of the machine. This host value is the, let me make this bigger so you can see it. This host value is essentially the name of the shortcut that we're going to be using here. So I'm going to press return, tab over, and then I'm going to say host name, and this is going to be the IP address that we're going to connect to. So I'm just going to copy and paste that in there. Go down a line here, and we're going to say the username that we're going to be using is CentOS, and identity file means that we're going to be using this private key to connect. I'm going to give it the path for this, which is desktop/fm linux demo.pem. So this says use this username and use this private key to connect to this server when I use this shortcut Linux demo. So I'm going to hit Command S to save this. This is going to go into my .ssh folder, and I'm just going to call this config. And it's going to go save in here. So if we take a look, here's my config file now. This is the file that I just saved. This copy was my old one. This is the config file that I just saved here in my .ssh folder. Now if you go to your home folder and you want to just browse to it, you may not see it here. It's an invisible folder. But if you hit Command-Shift-, it'll show you all of your invisible files, and you can kind of just navigate directly into it. There's that folder there. So I'm going to hit Command-Shift- again to hide all of those things, so I don't see the invisible folders. But it's there. So with this configured, I'm going to log out of the server. And let's see, I don't think I need to open up a new terminal window, but I can actually just use this shortcut now to connect to this server. So I can just type SSH Linux demo. I don't have to put anything else in. And there we go. I'm connected onto the machine. Super easy way to get back into it. If you're managing lots of machines, you can set up lots of these. If you have more of them, you can just kind of copy and paste this and then be like, all right, so this one's going to be Linux demo 2. And then now I have another shortcut I can use.
I'm assuming DNS names will work instead of IP addresses?
Yes. Yeah. I didn't set up a DNS entry for this, but yeah, if this was like, linuxdemo.bluefeathergroup.com, I could set it to this IP address, and then I could type this in here as well. Anything like that'll work. You can even do it with wildcards, actually, and that'll let you connect to whole sets of domains. If we set the host here, like if I wanted to do anything at bluefeathergroup.com, anytime I SSH to something at bluefeathergroup.com, it'll go here. Or it'll use these credentials. If we take off the host name, it'll use the original one. So it's kind of cool. You can do a lot of configuration with this. But I'm going to take all that out and just leave the one entry in here for now. All right, we're connected onto the server. This is great. Let me just go back to the Linux demo. There we go. We're back on the server. First thing you should always do, sudo yum update. And this updates all of the packages that are installed on the machine. Is this okay? Yes. And this just gets everything up to date. This is all your OS software updates, things like that. It doesn't take too long, but you don't want to have old, out-of-date software on your machine. Let's see. Hopefully this will go pretty quickly. It's just running and updating things. In Terminal, there's also another thing, and I haven't actually set this up, but you can do new remote connection on here. And this window is a little small, but you can set up additional servers on here to connect to. And then it's kind of an alternative to using this config file. But I think the config file is pretty convenient. But this is another way to do bookmarks. And then it'll open up those sessions for you. But I think this is pretty easy, right? You just type SSH Linux demo, goes, no problem. This config is also useful for other services. This is something that's done at the OS, or at the user level in your OS. So if you have other things which use SSH, it'll recognize these hosts and use these users and identity files. While this is getting set up, I'm going to make a new, actually I had this set up already on here, a new Sftp connection in this FTP program here called Forklift. And this is actually still using SSH, and you can do this on the command line too, but I just think it's really easy to do it in a GUI application like this. I'm going to be transferring some files to the server. So I want to set this connection up here. User CentOS here. I'm going to be using this, not a password, but the same private key file again. So I'm setting that up on here. Get the IP address in here. And this all looks good. I will hit save. And I should be able to connect to this machine from here too, although maybe not while it's running all its updates. Hold on a second, let's cancel that. Don't want this doing too many things here. This looks like this is about done. Come on. Oops. All right, so this thing connected now, and this puts you in your home folder, just like when you first connect with SSH. Now there are two files that we're going to need for this, and the first one is your certificate, so your license file, which you can download from the store, and the installer is going to look for it in a folder called Downloads. So I'm going to make a folder here called Downloads, go into that, and then here I've got my files for this. This is the installer. This is the certificate file. I'm going to drag this over here, and now this file is uploaded to the server. I'm going to go back up a directory here. That's probably all I'm going to need to move over, but I have the installer here as well, just in case it's slow to download this. All right, other things that this is done. The server is all updated. Let's install the other things that FileMaker recommends. So I'm going to go to sudo yum install wget, and this will allow us to download files. I'm going to do sudo yum install unzip, since we're going to be downloading a zip, and we need to be able to unzip it. And that has installed wget and unzip. So the way Claris tells you to get it on, to get the actual FileMaker Server installer, is to use wget. So I'm going to do that here. It might be a little slow. If it is, I'll transfer it up here. But I'm going to use wget, put in the URL of the actual installer download, press return. This is going to start the download process. Sometimes this goes really fast and sometimes this goes slow. And so like this looks like this is going to take 12 minutes. I'm not going to wait for that. So I'm just going to hit cancel here and just upload the zip that I have. Oops. So it started downloading it. Let's delete the one that's here. And let's put this one up. So this is going to upload a lot faster. I don't know, it's weird. Sometimes downloading from Claris servers, sometimes it's very slow. I did it the other day on AWS and it downloaded the whole thing in a second. So I don't know. It's interesting that their download speeds fluctuate so much.
That was my experience too.
Yeah. So it's up there now. We didn't have to wait for it. If I type ls, it's there. That's that FMS 19.1.2 zip. So I'm going to do unzip FMS 19.1.2. You can always press tab to autocomplete, which is what I just did there. So I just typed FMS, hit tab, it autocompleted it. So let's unzip this file. So it's unzipping. There it is. And now we have this RPM file, which is the package that we want to install on the server. Now this is really great. It actually goes and handles installing all the dependencies for you when you install the package, including Java, which is really nice. Because on Windows and Mac, if you want to enable the web publishing engine, you have to go and find the JDK file and do that installer. But this does the whole thing for you. So I'm going to do sudo. So I'll just show that here. If we have Java version, it's not installed, but I'm going to run the installer now. And it's going to do everything. So let's go sudo yum install FileMaker Server. So this is it. This is okay. Yes. This is actually doing the install now. So have I read the license agreement? Yes. So do we want to install a worker machine or a FileMaker Server master machine? So I'm going to hit 0 for that. Username and password. Put those in. Pin for resetting, installing FileMaker. Pretty quick.
This what you're doing now is what a lot of the rest of the world has been doing for decades.
Yeah.
Like, this is how they install software.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're setting up a web server to run a web application, you'll be running on some sort of Linux machine with Apache or Nginx. Actually, I was working with a web application for someone, and they were doing it on Windows Server, and I was very surprised. I was like, "Oh, it's on Windows and IIS. Wasn't expecting that." So here we go. So it should all be booted. Here we go. Waiting for the web server. Okay. Now I saw something on here, which has been an issue. Actually, we'll see this in a second. It's done. Complete. I'm going to copy this IP address and open this in the browser now. What? It refused to connect. What's going on? How come nothing is running on here? If I scroll up on here, where is it on here? I don't know why it always does this. It fails to start the HTTP server. Please reboot the system. We can do a whole reboot. It's actually not necessary. You can start the service directly. If we go in here and do sudo systemctl start com.filemaker.httpd.start service. There we go. Now it's running. I don't know why it doesn't start that successfully on the installer, but that's what happens with that. If we do want to restart it, we can do sudo reboot to just restart the machine, and that'll just restart the whole thing. I would recommend stopping FileMaker Server first, but now that it's installed, we have all the usual fms admin commands. So just type fms admin, everything's there, it all works exactly as you're used to. So this is good. I'm going to go to port 16,000 on here. And we get invalid certificate error. Now this is an interesting thing. I've been getting this on Chrome. I don't know why. It doesn't like connecting to these instances. I don't know if it's the IP address or the default certificate that's in here or what, or if they haven't even set that up yet. But I always end up having to do this in Safari. So I'm going to open Safari up, paste this in here, and now we can get the same error. Show details, that's fine. View the certificate, that looks good. Visit this website. Yes, visit website. I have to allow this. Now we have the admin console, and now this is what we're all used to. I'm just going to sign in. Use the Claris default certificate. Yes. Save. Accept the risks. Right. And look, this is it. This is FileMaker Server, as we're all totally used to seeing. It all looks and works exactly as you'd expect. The one thing that does not work on FileMaker Server for Linux is XML and PHP web publishing. You have to use the FileMaker Data API. But other than that, I mean, this is pretty much feature complete. You have to get different versions of any plugins if you want to put plugins in. But from this point out, it's regular FileMaker Server that you're used to working with. If you want to see where this actually got installed, this was put in the opt directory. So I can go cd opt. Oops. And that's all that's in here. There's a FileMaker server. Oh, sorry, there's a FileMaker folder, and this is the same structure that you're used to. cd FileMaker, look at what's in here, FileMaker server folder, yep. And this is all the usual stuff. Let's put this in the list so it's a little easier to see there. There's your CStore folder, your data folder, has your databases in it, all the PDFs and everything, HTTPS server, web publishing. So this is all, this is the standard stuff that we're used to working with. Let's take a look in the data folder. And databases. And there's our sample file, which is the one database that's on here. Sorry, sample folder, which has the database in it. There it is, fmserversample.fmp12. We can navigate this with Forklift or whatever your preferred FTP and Sftp program. If I go in here, we'll go to the same thing. Opt, FileMaker, FileMaker Server, and look, this looks just pretty much normal at this point. Data, databases. Don't want to touch them, but there's your live file for what's put up there. Since we ran on a machine which was powerful enough, we can go in and we can actually turn on the web publishing engine now, and this should pop on in a second. It doesn't ask us to install Java or OpenJDK, and there it is, it's running. We can turn on WebDirect and the data API. Let's take a look and see if this opens up. There it is, there's WebDirect. Let's see, now we've set up that server. Yeah, it still has a complaint, still complains about that. But we are up and running with the regular FileMaker server. All as normal, and it's just running on Linux. So I think that's pretty cool. It's actually pretty easy to set up. The hardest part is just getting used to using the command line. But you kind of learn some basic commands, and you get used to jumping around and looking at these things. But once it's up and running, it's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. So does anyone have any questions about getting that installed and getting that set up and configured?
I'm assuming you can set up the SSL certificate. You waited until you opened it up in the admin console. I'm sure you could set the default one from the command line.
Yes, you can use the same commands that you would always use with that. So it's fms admin certificate install, I believe. I need some options on there. Whoops. So it's all the same commands. There's the certificate command. You can also do it through the GUI in the admin console. If we go to, where was it in here? Configuration, SSL certificate, import custom certificate, we can just upload the files through here too. I can,
so a word on that. So I've done this a couple times. I've done it recently with this latest version. Worked great, just like you're doing. So I got the same thing. I couldn't log in with Chrome. Mm-hmm. But I had a real certificate for, a Gearbox certificate. So I ended up installing it through the GUI. And when I did, I had everything right, and I would hit import and it would say, okay. And I would hit accept. And it just kept on loading that dialog box over and over and over again.
This one, no matter what I did. Certificate dialog box?
Yeah, after you browse for all your certs. But eventually I ended up just once I restarted the server, everything was fine, and Chrome worked fine because it had a certificate, maybe other than the default one from Claris. But yeah. I had that same problem, and I thankfully I thought to open Safari, and then I was able to get into the admin console.
I don't know why it complains about this. It says it's setting scrambled credentials. So it's not even an. I thought it might be like an HSTS issue where it's expecting an HTTPS connection, and then it doesn't have it, and so for security purposes it just says, hey, this is suddenly unencrypted, someone might be trying to attack something here. But that's not it. It just doesn't understand it. It's weird. So yeah, I had to use Safari to get in.
But if you install another certificate,
a real
one that's not self-signed, it did work.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I do, and one question is, so this just came out, but whenever I install a Linux box, one of the first things I do is I install Apache or Nginx to have a web server, and I just assumed that I would have to install a web server, but you don't.
Yeah, I did the same thing actually. I went and installed Apache right away because it also in here. This is the part that I was mentioning earlier. In the documentation, it does say that that's required as well, but it kind of just does it on its own.
So it installs Apache.
It says it requires a web server in all deployments, but it just kind of does it on its own. Yeah, it installs.
But that's what it. Are you saying that it installs Apache though?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It just goes and installs the yum. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and it's not. It's not like the default Apache. It has its own version of it that deploys. That's why I had to do that particular start command wherever that was back here. This com.filemaker.httpd.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's that particular web server that it tries to start. It's just an interesting thing. I don't know why it does that, but yeah, it's not the regular one. But it does put it on automatically, which is nice. So yeah, I think that's about it. Interestingly, if we look at the Java version, it does put on 2.7.2, which I think is the latest version, and that's not the one that it says it recommends on the actual Java versions page. And I know on Windows servers I've had an issue with the wrong version of Java causing an issue with WebDirect and the web publishing engine not working properly and having to stick on like the specific version. But at least in this case, they automatically installed this version and it seems to be working fine. So you don't have to, you don't have to pre-install a specific version or go back to the one that they recommend. This is what they put on there, and everything's good so far.
So when are you going to have the Linux version of the Let's Encrypt script?
I think the Mac one will actually work. Same thing. It uses certbot. You just install the Linux version of certbot on here, and I think that'll do it. The Mac version of certbot.
I did the beta version and installed Let's Encrypt, and it worked.
Oops. Yeah.
So.
Oops, not setbot. Oh, I don't know where. I'd have to look it up. I don't know what the actual package is for it. But yeah, the certbot is available on Linux, and it should work fine. It's all the same commands as it is on Mac. It's exactly the same. And it runs the same stuff through the same shell.
Have you ever hosted anything on DigitalOcean?
We have one client who is running a web server on there right now, but that's we set them up with that. But that's our first usage of that. I don't know how this would fit with. I guess they've got virtual machines too that you can install. I know they have. What we set up with them was an actual application deployment rather than a virtual machine. But I imagine it would be a pretty similar deployment process on there.
They have droplets. We actually use DigitalOcean a lot, but the only thing we've done with FileMaker Server for Linux is on an AWS machine like you've done. But DigitalOcean, they've got I'm really impressed with their documentation and their ease of use. They've got a great interface for managing things. It's not very expensive, and I'm sure all this stuff would run fine on it. You can pick your droplets with your RAM and CPUs and all that. But even if you're not using DigitalOcean, if you ever have any need for trying to figure out how to do something on Linux that you're not familiar with, like updating Apache or MySQL or anything like that, they've got really good documentation, and they cross a lot of different OSs. A lot, CentOS, Red Hat, Debian. So it's a good resource just documentation wise.
Yeah, they seem pretty nice. We've got another application that's running on an AWS machine right now, and I'm like, maybe we should try DigitalOcean with that. So, so I think that's it. One interesting thing to note is Claris did a demo of, I don't know if it was a demo. They just did an announcement about some of the stuff, and they were very hesitant to say it seemed that it was faster on Linux. But they showed a whole bunch of benchmarks where it was faster on Linux. I mean, not like a ton, but it was, it always showed up just a little bit faster in all the tests, almost all of the tests that they showed. So I just thought that was interesting. I think there's some, considerations. Always is what they kind of said. It's not always a direct comparison, but just an interesting thing to keep in mind that there's a slight performance increase there. So
we have an AWS server Windows with FileMaker Server running on it, and we have a test version of a pretty large application we did last year. And I stood up the FileMaker Linux and I put it on there, and it's not like it blows it away, but almost every spot when I do just some spot checking and some testing, it's a teeny bit faster, not a lot, but it's always like there's one thing that it was slower, but almost everything else, like 80% of the things was faster, but it was just
a little bit faster.
Yeah. And you'd like to think that Linux would just, blow at the doors off, and maybe it will someday.
Yeah, Windows servers, I mean, it's pretty good, It's got a lot of overhead with the UI, but it's a pretty good OS for running server things in general.
Yeah, it might mean that it's not that Linux should be much. It's rather than saying that FileMaker Server for Linux isn't great, it's probably saying FileMaker Server for Windows is already pretty zippy.
Yeah.
I mean, it like you said, isn't it true? It used to be that a lot of Mac people don't like to hear this, but I think FileMaker Server on Windows wasn't it always faster than on Macs for a while?
In many cases, with speed and reliability, I've found that FileMaker Server is better on a Windows machine than on a Mac. Also, because if you're putting it on a Mac, you're probably putting it on a Mac Mini, which isn't. I mean, that's not server hardware, And they've got slow 5,400 RPM hard drives. I guess now they've got better hard drives, so you can get one of those M1s. That's probably fast. I haven't tried it on one of those yet, but
they've had them for a while. Even my, I think 2012 Mac Mini has an SSD in it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a 15, but yeah.
And my Apple.
I was mentioning that because
Mini
you would never put
Monday.
one of the M1s.
Yeah, it's going to be my development server.
So Claris has not released a new version of FileMaker, which officially works on Big Sur yet. And I don't think they have a binary for the M1, so it'll be running in Rosetta 2. Yeah. So let us know how that goes. Hopefully it'll be good. The comment I was making about the 5,400 RPM drives was just that, that was the default in a Mac Mini for a really long time. It's because it's just it's not server hardware. It's just consumer, low energy usage, lower performance stuff. So, which is not great for a database server. But anyway, so that's that. Any other questions about anything? No? Okay.
This is a very smooth demo, David.
Oh, good. Were you worried there were going to be lots of problems?
No. I mean, that's your demos are usually quite smooth, but it went very smoothly.
Oh, good. All right, so we have one more bonus presentation from Thomas.
If you could even call that.
Yeah, it's going to be really quick. Just on the performance improvements that came with FileMaker Server 19.1.2, because we looked at this and Thomas did some of these tests, and they were like, okay, we have to get everyone on 19.1.2 as soon as possible. So Thomas, why don't you present and show us the result of your testing?
This is one specific test for one specific feature, and that is the sort on server, which I don't think was even advertised well. Maybe it was. Maybe everybody knows. But David had to mention that, and I was like, wait, that's a big deal. So this is the exact same file, a copy of a customer's file, on two different servers. One is running 18, one is running 19. The other one's on 18 because I couldn't find the older version of 19 and installer for it. But there wasn't a huge difference between 18 and the original 19, performance-wise. So this is set up to run a report that's going to run a report on all of the order records in the database with a whole lots of summaries. So first I'm going to run it on 19. And the only change I've made to the script from the production version is it times it. I'm surprised we even got the dialogue.
So this is an unreasonably large report, which is being run here. Like this would never run on the production environment because this is running on every record that they've got in the system and lots of.
I don't know about that.
That they wouldn't do
weird stuff.
All right.
Every now and then, customers like to do. So that is that 29 seconds, right? Am I reading that right? Yeah.
Yep.
29 seconds.
It felt like 29 seconds.
Yep.
And that is over 65,000 records, and this is summaries in summaries. There's no actually body on this report you're looking at.
And it's all sorting on related records too.
Yes, and there is a sort. One of the sorts I put in is on related records, or at least one. So that's 30 seconds. If I click on this, we're going to be here a while if we wait for this to finish. This, I think it was around 36 or 37 minutes. Wait, it was 36 minutes. Yes, it was 36 minutes. The first time I tested this takes 36 minutes to run. The first time I ran this over 19, it ran in 37 seconds. I was like, well, that's the bigger number. That's not good. But units are different.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a huge performance increase for sorting on the server.
Was there some bottleneck? I mean, what was there an explanation?
Yes. So, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
Oh, for why they put it up on the server now and haven't done that before?
No, just for the performance increase.
Well, it's actually sorting the records on the server and then sending them back to you in order instead of downloading every single record to your machine.
Okay, that's what it is.
Your machine having to look at the data and figure out what order they go in. So yeah,
that's a huge performance increase.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Now, one thing is it won't always sort on the server if the server is busy. Even they were kind of vague about what there's no way to predict exactly when it will and won't. But if the server's already a lot of resources are taken, it won't sort it on the server, and it'll send it back to you, which is really shocking when you have this sort of like. I want to get a bigger server at that point and just try it on the server, please.
One of the things they said is if the client has already downloaded all of the records, it'll do the sorting on the client.
That, I guess.
Which makes sense. Why not, I guess. But, yeah, they didn't really give all the... They had a presentation that talked about this. They didn't really say all of the conditions. This was in their under the hood session they did recently. Like Thomas said, they were kind of vague. They're like, it decides if it's going to do it on the client or on the server.
But Clay told it when to decide.
Yeah, right? It's like, when it's going to do it. Just let us know. It doesn't have to be a secret.
Yeah, if there are any specific things we need to do to make sure it's...
Yeah.
Now, one thing I remember him talking about, I didn't quite fully understand it, but depending on what you have in your sort, it can still slow it down. Like if there's globals, or I think calculations unstored calculation might do it too, because those are session specific. That's more times the server is having to come back to your computer being like, all right, what's that global variable?
Yeah, if you have a calculation, if you're sorting on a calculation which uses a global variable, or uses a variable that's set in some script that you're running, because that variable only exists on your client machine, so it has to come back to your machine for it.
But I don't think that necessarily means it's going to sort everything on your client machine. It just means there's a little bit more communication, I think, is what I got there. But again, there's a lot of vague and not quite explained things about it, but definitely worth updating. Definitely worth getting clients to update to this if you have any big old reports like this.
Now, the other requirement for this is that you must be on FileMaker Pro 19.1.3.
Yeah.
So your server and client must be updated to take advantage of this server-side sorting.
Yeah, because the client has to throw it to it. Yeah,
it has to know.
Yeah. But still, I mean, it's really great. So, you don't always have to have these giant reports that are going to take half an hour to run, right? If you just have some minor sorting, this can prevent you from getting a sort dialog at all. And it just pops up instantly, which is really nice. Even in small databases, sometimes if you just, I've seen some things and there's a sort dialog there and you upgrade to this and all of a sudden it just loads up and it just pops up instantly and it's very fast and zippy and there's no sorting records dialog for a second, which is just not a nice user experience. So it's a really easy, performance improvement. You just install the new software and then all of a sudden things are faster. It's really great. I think they had another performance improvement like that back in like 15 or 16 or something. They changed some caching things around, and it was another one of those just like install the new version and now your database is faster. So
yeah,
that's the best kind of performance improvement, I think, is just don't do anything. just faster now.
Yeah, perform script on server was nice, but that you had to code for that one.
Yeah. Yeah. This one you don't have to make any code changes.
Yeah. So, and we're not going to sit here and watch this finish. I mean, it's going to sit there and finish on my computer, but
we can see clearly this is going to take a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it. Thanks a lot, Thomas. We both definitely recommend everyone upgrade to the latest version of FileMaker Server and FileMaker Pro. Big performance improvements.
Yeah, I wish the installer worked a little different, but it's a new installation even when updating from well, you run the installer over it, but you're running the installer. It's not a patch.
But it does preserve your settings and things, which is nice. It does it like a patch update.
Yeah,
that's
I had some issues when updating from 18 with that, but with all the 19 servers, that seemed to work just fine.
Yeah, some people will say, even no matter what Claris says, to uninstall and then install, because that if you didn't, it would cause problems for so many years. But are you all saying you don't have to uninstall 19.1.19.0 to update to 19.1.2 or 19.1.3?
One of the features that Claris says with this release is that they don't have a patch version for the server. They just have the installer for it.
But when
you do the install, you don't have to uninstall the old version first if you're upgrading from an earlier version of 19 or 18. Okay. So normally if you're going from 18 to 19, you have to uninstall 18, set up 19, and then re-import your scripts and do all your configuration on there and things like that. For this version, they say you don't need to do that going back as far as FileMaker Server 18. You can just run the installer and it just does all the updates and it patches.
But what are you guys doing?
We haven't had issues with 19, and we've just installed it and the servers seem to be running fine. Actually, okay. I think there are a whole bunch of little bugs that got fixed with that update. Progressive backup issues and things that I think we've had resolved on some servers after, or at least not popped up again yet after installing that. I've had
18
trouble from 18 though. I've gotten some weird little error. It didn't break anything. It's just like, whoops, can't do it. And I'd have to go look up what that error was.
And you had to go through and actually do the full uninstall and reinstall for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not as fun.
No.
But
it's nice.
That's the classic what you have to do anyway. So it's
yeah. So it seems like it'll be good on the 19 servers. We did the straight upgrade and it worked. Everything seems to be fine. So
good to know.
And I think there was in the forums a fix for how to get it to do it from 18. There was some file to go tweak. I haven't done that yet though. I haven't had
There's a server channel in that FM Slug Slack group, and I don't know, David, you're in that Slack group, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you? I don't know if you guys, other guys are, but there's a lot of nuggets in there on a regular basis. It's pretty active. So
yeah, okay.
All right. Well,
I think
thank you.
that's it for this. Our next meeting is going to be, what day is their next one? Oh, it's January 6th is our next one. We don't have a topic yet, so if you guys have any ideas or things that you want to hear about, let us know. Or if you want to present something, everyone is welcome to present if you have something interesting. Yeah, we will be preparing for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Thomas, you can come back and show us if this sort is finished.
Yeah.
Might be.
Almost. We'll come back in January and he'll be like, it's almost done, guys. Let's watch it finish.
95% of the way good.
Yeah.
Right, we're good. Actually, one other thing I think we should mention, Accordion Table. If you guys might have seen David present that before, has gotten an update to where you can put HTML cells basically in your table rows, to where you can have big blocks of HTML that you can just feed in. And what that's let us do, the main reason for that is you can now have images in your Accordion Table by we're base 64ing them and putting them in there. We've done that. You could also probably use links and things. I think it would be an excellent combination with Cloud Container, because you could use the Cloud Container links in the HTML.
Yeah, it's not. We haven't released that yet because we got to make another couple updates on it and make that ready. But to see it on here, if we do, this is what it will look like. You can essentially just set. Oops, it was not this one, other file. Let's see here.
Want me to pull it up? Oh, never mind. My FileMaker is busy.
Here we go. Let's see here. We set data from FileMaker now. So here we go. We've got images that'll load up in the HTML. And I thought I had changed this actually. Well, that's what I said. We're still working on this one. Maybe it was the other file.
Well, there are images in there.
That's true, but it doesn't have the right thing. Well, oh, hold on a second.
Sorry, I brought up something you weren't prepared to present.
I know. We do this here. There we go. So you can actually just put whatever raw HTML you want in there now. And so you can format things in non-cell styles, which is great. Gets the big images and things like that in there. Because this is still 3 cells. There's a left cell, a middle cell, which covers all this, and a right cell. So it's still a table, but now you can just set raw HTML and do whatever you want. So you can make things look really fancy.
Very cool.
But yeah, that'll be available soon. Okay.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Have a great holiday.
You too, guys.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.